Today is Pentecost Sunday. Did the Spirit of God descend only once or always? Before I launch into my message for the day, I believe that a little background may be needed. Looking over my own life, although I know what it means, I have no memory of ever using the word Pentecost in a common or ordinary dialogue. I expect you haven't either. So, to begin, what was the origin of Pentecost? First, what does it literally mean? The Old English Pentecostan, via ecclesiastical Latin from Greek Pentecoste, Hemera, 50th day, was first used because the Jewish festival of the year-end harvest is held on the 50th day after the second day of Passover. Jews would celebrate the harvest festival, also known as Sukkot, by building temporary huts called sukkahs and spending time in them, particularly for meals and sleeping. They also used the four species, citron, palm branch, myrtle branches, and willow branches, and waved them in all six directions while praying. Sukkot is a week-long holiday that begins in autumn and lasts for 1 week, or 8 days outside of Israel. Over time, this also came to mean the remembrance of the giving of the Torah, their sacred book. I can imagine that this harvest feast has been celebrated from time immemorial for any people who gathered together to harvest the last fruits of the land before fall and winter arrived, particularly to harvest wheat. For Christians celebrating their Last Supper with Jesus before his death, a feast we now celebrate daily around the world. In more liturgical churches, on their altars a tabernacle, meaning house, their belief is that the consecrated bread of offering, which is always kept there, is indeed God made flesh. In Christianity, Pentecost commemorates the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles, marking the beginning of the church. In the book of Acts, as I've already stated, the Feast of Harvest came to the Jews 7 weeks after the events of the first fruits, and Jews from all over, not just Palestine, visitors from many lands, gathered to celebrate the festivities of good food and wine. Yet Peter stood up in the midst of this mixed crowd, somewhere next to a field in Jerusalem where the wheat for fall's bread was being harvested. I imagine the crowd was quite boisterous. Here is a recording of the words he spoke out loud to the rapidly quieting crowd. When the time for Pentecost was fulfilled, they were all one place together, and suddenly there came from the sky a noise like a strong driving wind. Then there appeared to them tongues of fire, which parted and came to rest on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in different tongues, as the Spirit enabled them to proclaim. Now there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven, staying in Jerusalem. At this sound they gathered in a large crowd, but they were confused because each one had heard them speaking in his own language. They were astounded, and in amazement they asked, "Are not all these people who are speaking Galileans? Then how does each of us hear them in his own native language? We are Parthians, Medes, Edomites, inhabitants of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the districts of Libya near Cyrene, as well as travelers from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans and Arabs. Yet we hear them speaking in our own tongues of the mighty works of God." They were all astounded and bewildered, said to one another, "What does this mean?" Others said, scoffing, "They have had too much new wine." Then Peter's voice rose up above the mumbling and questioning. Standing up with the 11, he raised his voice and proclaimed to them, "You who are Jews, indeed all of you staying in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and listen to my words. These people are not drunk as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this is what was spoken through the prophet Joel. It will come to pass in the last days, God says, that I will pour out a portion of my Spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy, your young men shall see visions, your old men shall dream dreams. Indeed, upon my servants and even handmaids I will pour out a portion of my Spirit in those days, and they too shall prophesy." It continues on a bit, but it's quite clear that everyone everywhere heard that this divine and mysterious Spirit had descended on all of them, no matter what land they came from, what language they spoke. Daughters and sons, old men, young men, even their maids and servants were to be filled to the brim with the same Spirit of God. No exceptions, period. So, is this same Spirit of peace the one bestowed on all the people present to hear Peter's proclamation, each in their own languages, still present in our lives? We are at a breaking point in our country. And all of us, each one of us, does not have the luxury of sitting down, and saying nothing. We need to stand up and shout out what we want this country to be. Hopefully the vision Jesus had proclaimed. Feed the hungry, visit the sick and those in prison. Welcome the homeless. Welcome the stranger, those in mourning, the poor, those who are persecuted. It's easy to believe that we have no power. It's easy to go along to get along, to shut our ears and eyes and hearts to those people who are being persecuted and attacked at the moment, and hide our heads to try to stay invisible and thus safe. This is a myth, a deception. I want to show you stories of people who have stood up in their face of great persecution, under fear of losing their homes, their livelihoods, even their lives. These are stories that come from my spouse and Cheryl's visits to what is erroneously called the Holy Land, and how some people spoke truth to power, each in their own way. We were there in January of 2008 with a group of professors and fellow seminarians from Pacific School of Religion. We were there not to be tourists, but to visit the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim groups working together to bring about a fair peace in this not-so-holy land. After we landed at the airport in Tel Aviv, after seemingly endless oceanic crossing experience, it was already dark, and we were very tired and visibly eager to get what we saw as our bus drove into the night for our first destination. But the wall had been built after my last trip decades before. As we kept hurtling into the darkness to our first destination, the wall loomed menacingly over us, precipitating me to write this poem in the swaying bus. The Bubble, the ride from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, 2008. Bone-tired, snugly tucked in the tourist bus, we speed through the gathering dark, Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Lightning flashing from the north splits the cloudy sky, feeling glimpses of the wall, barbed wire, guard posts reveal a none too friendly land. I wipe my hand across the window to clear away the fog, but still the thin skin of the tourist bus, my passport, my privilege, separate me from the suffering this road has seen. The blood of martyrs for a Jewish state, the tears of Palestinians, ancient lands wrest from work-calloused hands, olive trees uprooted. We are hurtling into the dark toward Bethlehem, where some say a Prince of Peace was born. When will his reign begin? A few days later, we had the opportunity to visit the owner of an olive orchard whose centuries-old trees had been felled by Israelis. It was sort of ironic that he himself, his family roots deeper than the olive trees that had been uprooted, was a Christian, as his ancestors had been. We had come not just to visit with him and see how now the bare land that surrounded his home, but to go out into the newly plowed land to plant baby olive trees as an act both of resistance and of hope. Called to hope. Plant an olive tree, one tree, if that is all you can, though it comes up short by almost any measure to replace 1 million lost. The bulldozer, the occupier's favorite tool, unfeeling, unrelenting, unknowing, plows under without regard centuries-old groves. Their only sin, having set fruit in soil that has been tilled for centuries by the people of this land, uprooted as their precious trees from the land they love that loves them back. Plant one tree, if that is all you can. Perhaps the holy dove, always hovering on the wings of human affairs, will pluck from its young branches a single sprig of hope. I was unable to join them, for as much as I wanted to, I was just a few months away from a much delayed and much needed knee replacement. A cane and pain meds had been my constant companion since I had arrived. Instead, I found a warm, centuries-old rock wall and began to play with two black and white puppies while I awaited their return. Initially, they were very shy, but I finally coaxed them away from the sun-warmed stones and finally had one sitting in my arms. Perfect peace descended. Puppy love. Palestinian Olive Grove, West Bank, Israel. Little one, are you half white or half black? In some places, like here, distinctions matter. Nestled in my encircling arms, our breaths mingle, your eyes and mine close in bliss. We share each other's warmth as winter sun dips low on the horizon. You nuzzle my neck, your soft cries of content filling up my heart. The others are off planting olive trees, no doubt a noble and needed task, yet the two of us rest here on this rough-hewn, time-worn wall, breathing blessings at workday's end. May the world be kind to you. May you always know loving hands, a belly full at the end of a day, shelter from the rain, a soft bed to comfort you at night. And may the warring tribes that split this land in two learn to wish the same, not only for their own, but all the tribes who call this land home. Puppy love is good for humans too. Another one of my most precious memories was one of our visit to Hebron, where there is the tomb of the patriarchs. Hebron is a city on the West Bank in Palestine and is the location of the tomb of the patriarch, a site revered by Jews, Muslims, and Christians. The tomb is believed to be the burial place of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah, the patriarchs and matriarchs of Judaism, and figures also revered in Christianity and Islam. We Christians were allowed to enter the tomb to pray, kneeling in our strangely anachronistic for us, but also required and borrowed but comforting hijabs. After this, we went into the downtown marketplace in the open air and on the narrow and centuries-old cobbled streets. I was very glad I had brought my cane with me. As I looked up to the sky of this very narrow walkway between small open-air stalls, I saw not a clear sky, but fish nets filled with trash and other debris all along the old street where they had the cellars. Hebron's control by Israelis stems from the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel gained full control of the West Bank, including Hebron. While Hebron is a Palestinian city with a significant Palestinian population, it's also the location of illegal settlements, primarily in the old city area. The Jewish citizens who had come to Hebron for a meeting in a hotel had refused to leave and took over many of the downtown homes above the marketplace. It was their garbage that casually and hatefully did their stain to the Palestinian residents. They were also fully armed Jewish children everywhere with randomly placed and fully guarded checkpoints. One had to get permission to pass through. The children of this small city, all Muslim, would have great trouble and much wasted time to be able to get to and from school each day. But one older woman, a Muslim with her front window looking down on the street filled with children, protested in her own way. Each day, rain or shine, she would extend a ladder out her window to allow them to climb up one by one, backpacks on their shoulders, cross to the back window and get to school safely on another ladder and on time. She would repeat this in reverse every afternoon. Here is my poem honoring this unseen and unrecognized angel of Hebron. This is the Angel of Hebron, Hebron, Israel, January 2008. Jacob in a vision saw a ladder, angels coming up and down from heaven. You'd think that they could just fly with their 3 sets of wings. But maybe the ladder was to help us wingless ones travel too, between the heavens and the earth. There was a woman at Hebron, an ordinary woman by all accounts, another wingless one, whose home was the only safe and lawful passage for children to get to and from their school each day, in a land where armed soldiers dictated their daily lives. From her balcony each day she lowered a ladder to the ground. I can picture her hands steadying at his little boy struggling with his books for balance as he negotiated his way. Business as usual for him on a run-of-the-mill school day. 2 times a day, come rain or shine, her self-appointed task, welcoming a stream of women, lowering and raising the ladder, her shopping and cleaning sandwiched in between. Not all of us are wingless. The lady lowering her ladder day after day in her little home in Hebron grew wings, and on her back she carried those little ones soaring to the highest heavens. As we got ready to leave the holy city and be driven back to the Tel Aviv airport, we got a chance not to just plant baby saplings in a small grove in the country, but to stand with the women in black at the roundabout hub on a weekday with workday cars swirling all around us. We are very fortunate to stand in protest to the continued illegal occupation of Palestinian land. The term intifada refers to a Palestinian uprising or shaking off against the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories. The protest began in 1988. The first intifada was in full swing. This uprising, which began in December of 1987 after a fatal traffic incident involving an Israeli truck and Palestinian workers, involved widespread protests, civil disobedience, and even violence to the Palestinians. The Israeli military responded with a harsh crackdown, including mass arrests, curfews, and using force against protesters. Now an international organization with women from around the globe in their own countries, these women in black, first all Jewish women protesting against their own government in Tel Aviv, would emerge from their homes, their offices, to stand silently together in solidarity every Friday with protest signs as cars swirled around them in busy midday traffic. We were so proud to be able to stand in silent protest with them. The women in black, protesting the occupation. 2,000 years ago, his disciples had fled long before dawn that fateful day, fearing the fate that befell their erstwhile leader, with whom they had broken bread just the night before, to inaugurate the coming of the kingdom, along with their assured place in it. But the women were there all along the way, loving, hoping, grieving, crying. They huddled close together to pray. They walked along the way near him, pained comfort in their eyes, words spoken from their heart, sorrowing those softly spoken goodbyes. And after the horror of those 3 hours, lasting a lifetime for them as their dreams slowly died, they took him from the cross, washed his wounds, anointed him one last time before their watch was over, and the night came to end that agonizing day. 2,000 years have passed since that sacred vigil so long ago, where weeping women kept watch with wordless love, so often pushed to the sidelines of human affairs, cleaning up the messes the men had made, binding wounds, burying the dead, wiping away tears. But women still stand in silent witness, each week keeping solemn vigil, calling for justice for all who dwell in the Holy Land. These women in black, come sun or sleet or rain, amidst passers-by, hurrying about their daily chores. Each Friday they meet silently, no matter sun or rain, holding their battered signs in their work-worn hands. Unwavering, unstoppable. As they leave, they speak their final words to one another. Blessed Sabbath tonight, and see you next Friday. You see, the women are still here, keeping watch all along the way, loving, hoping, grieving, crying. They still held close to pray. All over the so-called Holy Land, people in private and olive orchards planting sapling olive trees in the devastated land, me sitting on the wall holding a precious black and white puppy, in small apartments in Hebron letting down ladders twice a day to help the Muslim children go to school safely, to public demonstrations from Jewish women standing up silently, straight and tall, calling the Israeli government to account for the treatment of their Palestinian neighbors. They all continue to lower ladders, plant trees, stand in busy public streets at noon, all of them in their own way, following the direction of their own spirit, continuing even after 2,000 years to bring peace to the land. We began this homily by showing a picture of an actual and very imposing and threatening dividing wall in Israel, built to keep people apart. These stories I have shared with you illustrated how people of all faiths have united to destroy both the physical and spiritual walls that separate us, if only a brick at a time. To inspire us more, let us listen to Joshua Fit, the Battle of Jericho, which is a beloved African-American spiritual song with roots in the first half of the 19th century. It tells the story of the biblical Jericho battle, where Joshua, the leader of the Israelites, led them to victory along the city's walls. Joshua Fit, the Battle of Jericho, reminds a powerful and enduring spiritual, often sung in churches and other gatherings as a reminder of faith, perseverance, and the potential for triumph against seemingly insurmountable odds. Now, fit is a much older and no longer used word for fought. It was the form used by the slaves in the 19th century in our very own country. Fit was historically used as the past tense of fight, especially in African American vernacular English and Southern U.S. English. The word fit was used by slaves to break their chains of slavery. The word fit has faded over time, but we now use the term fought, and more importantly in the present tense fight. For the battle continues in our very own lives, our very own times. Now we must continue to break whatever chains, whatever walls of oppression that we encounter, and we must be fit, pun intended, to do it. May each of us, all of us together, continue it each and every day to join together to continue to move the bricks and stones away so that we can see each other clearly and fall in love with what we see. So this is the true Pentecost still going on. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.